basically, I really just, one of the things I've always wanted to talk to you about was, I guess, firstly, what first fascinated you about surrealism? Because you are the father of surrealism in Australia.
Well, it was instinctive, I think. I think from my earliest childhood, I always thought there was something more than just the eye told me. A story about looking into the rock pools of Terrigal.
Yes,
It was a true one. It opened up a world that I wouldn't have realised was there. Someone peering around. And then the psychologists, Freud especially, opened up this idea to me that there's an immense amount of information stored away in the subconscious level of the mind, which was real and could come out when needed. So that was the area that I sort of felt most interested in.
Okay.
But like all young artists, I experimented with a number of styles.
That's right. Yeah, which we're seeing some of your early work, which it seems that the work that you're doing now, I mean, everyone always says that the work you're doing now, it just keeps getting better and better from the more you paint. But what I tend to see in your work is that a lot of your early work had the references to some of the older surrealist masters. Now it's all completely gone, and it's purely just your ideas. I guess is that more? I guess it's I'd imagine it's more of you looking inward rather than looking toward others.
Yes, though every now and again, I did a painting, Faux Delft by Day Night.
Yes.
Now that came out of a recollection of looking at the Vermeer in The Hague many years ago, and I tried to imagine what it would have been like, not as it was, but how in the mood of that period, that rather gothic mystery hanging around. And so I converted it into a kind of surreal Delft.
That's interesting. So one of the things I was going to ask you about was, I guess coming off that, how intuitive is it when you create? I mean, how much thought is done prior to putting brush to?
Very little. At one stage in the 60s, work was much more, I would say, symbolic. I had an idea that I wanted to find forms to express. But these days, and for the past 20, 30 years, I just work automatically, draw with charcoal, see what happens, add collage to sort of push it in a certain direction, watching what happens, and then if it strikes me as being relevant to me,
you pursue it.
But that's a drawing, for instance, goes on to the thing. But they don't now start from a preconceived intention. It just happens on the paper and on the canvas. And then I have to find the title.
That's right. You got to decode it. That's interesting, because it's amazing the different approaches. I know you've always had the distinction of being an art critic as well, and a writer. Probably even more so before you were known as a painter. How much of that sort of spurred you on early? Having that theoretical background as well.
Well, a lot of it comes into there's all sorts of influences, stylistic influences. The way Turner used paint, for instance, controls what I do up to a point. Not the image, but the way it's put on to the canvas. Originally, way back, Dali, of course, did. But I think I've now absorbed a lot of different elements, certainly from Turner, but from others as well.
Yeah.
But they haven't been conscious adaptations, except in the case of that Vermeer of Delft.
Yeah.
But they're just floated up from the accumulations in the subconscious.
It's interesting that you say Turner, because now that you mention it, I can understand where with certain works, I can, where I never would have picked the connection.
No, well, I don't actually use his subject.
No, that's right. Not
But just the way he evokes an atmosphere is, I think,
absolutely
something that I find I like to try.
Yeah, absolutely. There was part of the article I just want to ask, basically being an article about symbolism, how important, I mean, given that you work very intuitively, how important are symbols to your work, and are they still important now?
No, they're not important to me now. They were at an earlier stage. A little bit against the grain of real surrealism, because according to Breton, pure psychic automatism, not modified by aesthetical,
that's right,
ethical considerations at all. Well, I don't think I ever really was able to adapt that attitude. I always felt that there was an aesthetic element that was involved, not necessarily consciously, but you made judgments about the way a thing looked, whether it seemed right or wrong to you. That was an aesthetic judgment. Ethical judgments, yes.
That's a tricky one.
Well, they did come into the paintings I did during the war. They were very much sort of critical.
And imagine even some of your new work. I remember reading a quote where you said that your work has changed since September 11th.
Oh, that's
well.
And, well, if you're sensitive to the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time, you can't help it. It does have an inflection on what you do. And a lot of the work that I did post 9/11 had this sense of menace and
particularly that your last exhibition at the State Gallery, where it combined the drawing process, and you had your major work that was inspired, particularly by that subject. I thought it was an amazingly powerful piece.
Well, again, it wasn't symbolic, because there was nothing there that I could have ascribed a symbolic meaning to, but they were just forms that seemed to me to contain an element of threat. It's hard to explain, but I just let my imagination flow.
That's the truth. That's the truth. So I remember part of that exhibition, I was with some people, and they were looking at the work and sort of saying, "Well, where are the planes?" No, it's not quite like that.
No, you can't translate it into words.
But I know that some people have spoken about some of the symbols that you have, like, say, even the way that you paint the skies, and it's always a storm in the sky, and it's closing in, and even the meeting of land and sea is part of that as well, and how everything seems to live, it's sort of almost becoming flesh, or
that mutability of form has been with me from the earliest days, where it moves from one sort of substance to another, and flesh or stone or bone or whatever it is, it's part of that constant metamorphosis of form.
So the dreamlike quality, I suppose. So is there ever a fixed meaning to any symbols or any
Some of the earlier ones, the 60s ones, had
Yeah.
a precise meaning to me.
Yeah.
But later ones, no, that don't arise out of any feelings I have a message to convey.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So, what are your plans for 2006? You mentioned the exhibition with Waters.
That's all I think. This Nogam one is this year,
Okay.
and 2006
Is the Waters.
Waters.
Okay, fantastic. And how many works will be in each exhibition?
Oh, I don't know. But I think I've got about 25 finished works here.
Wow.
It depends on whether the gallery can cope with
That's right.
how many they can cope with. But I'll just keep on painting that, and I'll show them sometime somewhere.
That's right. That's right. Oh, I'd love to see if you have them.
Yes.
Have them handy there.
I can show you a few.
I'd love to. I appreciate that. That gives me a lot to work with